everybody, and welcome back to Sacramento Comedy Spot Community Highlights, where we talk to members of our improv community about their experiences. Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, you do many things at the Comedy Spot. You are an improviser, you are board of directors, you are our chief resident doctor person, not in the official title.
I am all of those things. I have been all of those things. Well, the doctor thing I've been for longer. But yeah, I joined the Comedy Spot as a 101 student in 2018. The little video on the reel is on the TV.
I see you.
That's me from my second class. It's baby improviser Sarah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
2018. Okay, did you have any theater improv experience before then?
No, I did the one act festival in high school. Never. I always wanted to do something that blended medicine and comedy. And then my brother was like, well, you're not funny, so you can't do that. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll become a doctor.
Dude.
Yeah, look at me now. And so yeah, no, never had any experience. I wish I did, but yeah.
Well, you're doing it now.
I'm doing it now, yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, so talk me through the shows that you're on.
So I'm on Riot, which is every other first Saturday. And then on second Saturdays, I alternate between Genre High and Stem Fatales.
Okay. Wow, that's three pretty different formats.
Yes. It's a little bit of each. I've got short form, montage, and then narrative. So it's awesome because I get to do all three things and keeps me on my toes.
That's cool. Okay. So in Genre High narrative, do you feel like you have certain parts that you like to play? How do you feel about narrative as a whole?
Well, narrative is very new to me. And so when Lacey and Dustin approached me about doing Genre High 2 years ago, I was really intimidated because I've never done anything longer than long form. And so it was so much fun. I mean, I think it just kind of broke my brain and I put it back together, and it's super challenging and it's really fun. I tend to have in practice a lot of main character energy, but being the main
in real life, you're a very kind, pleasant person, and on stage, you're like, everybody out of my way.
But I realize being the main is fun, but it's actually a lot more fun being one of the supporting characters, because then you get to pop in, and at least for Genre High, you can be the school counselor, or you could be, the smoked out buddy that's whatever, saying weird things. It's just fun to be support, and I love the way that it all just comes together, and I'm always on the wings, at 8:15 looking at the clock and being like, what are we doing? I'm backstage panicking, where is this all going? And then it just kind of...
No, and it comes together.
It comes together. You just trust your teammates and you just go out there and have fun, and somehow you land the plane and it's super fun.
I totally get what you're talking about. I feel like I've talked about this before, but when we were doing stuff for Bardic and we were learning narrative, I would go home after rehearsal and be like, my brain is so broken and full.
So tired, yeah.
So tired.
Yeah.
And then at some point you're just like, oh, no, totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think it actually clicked for me recently in a show, in one of our last shows, where I suddenly just got it.
Yeah.
And that panic that I usually have backstage was just kind of a calm of all right, this is the low, and that this is where we're going to take the character, and this is how we're going to get there. And it was just it was amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
Because I think I thought a lot about how narrative is different from other formats, so I'm interested in your perspective in terms of in montage or a lot of other forms, you have each scene has funny in it, and that's not necessarily untrue for narrative, but there's so much more tension that exists in telling a story, especially in those middle scenes where it's the downfall happens, or there's a fight between two people who care about it can get kind of spicy on stage.
Yeah, one of the hardest things that I'm trying to learn is to really sit in the villain character, right? So I'm going from main character energy to my villain era is the evolution of me in narrative. And it's really hard to embrace the anger or the negative feelings. And I think the thing about narrative that is fun and different than other forms is the connection that you have to have with your scene partner. And you go into a really deep place, or when you go into a really deep place with your scene partner is really where the scene kind of unfolds. And in short form and in long form, you don't really have the time. Definitely not in short form. And in long form, maybe a little bit. But you don't really have the space. to
Yeah.
really, really connect with each other. But in narrative, you do, and it pays off.
Yeah, I feel like it rotates around emotions and about like because this is, I mean, in scenes they're always like, you should know each other, and in narrative it's like, you literally have to or the show doesn't
It doesn't
work.
make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
I feel like for your villain era, it could definitely be the thing of like, people say that like great villains are like where what they want makes sense, but the way that they're trying to get it doesn't.
Oh, I like that. I haven't thought about that.
They're like bothered by something. You're like, that is totally unreasonable. And they're like, and this is how I'm going to do it. And you're like, oh no, that's horrible.
Don't do it that way. Yeah.
It's like
That's
a main
so true.
character, but twisted almost.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, their want is similar to, the protagonist's want. But you're right, the way that they get there is not conventional.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to lock that in for next time you see me as a villain.
Okay, so talk to me about Stem Fatales. Is that a format that you made up or you kind of like put together, different formats?
We came up with a lot of different formats. We wanted to do something different and something that actually would help make the show have a little bit of kind of dimensionality to it.
Ooh.
Yeah, so, I had a little bit of a sense of how Riot kind of in the second half, we come together and we do, we'll start we'll get a new suggestion, right? But also when you come back to that zero scene, it's kind of a palate cleanser. So I was thinking about that, but actually our coach and the whole team, we kind of came up with the idea of kind of this accordion format of how do we kind of embody what it means to be in this academic conference, which is usually very dry and boring, but there's characters that come out from it, right? And so you're sitting there for the drama of it, right? Of one person arguing their paper versus another. And then we get to see it in those scenes. So it's an original idea. I don't know if other teams elsewhere in the world do it that way. But we kind of organically came up with it as we were just trying to figure out how can we do this a little bit differently? How do we make it easier on ourselves? And how do we present something new and original, but also integral to what we're trying to do as like academics?
That's very cool. Yeah, I really appreciate it's so fun, but it really does feel academic when on stage you're like presenting your hypothesis and your work. And sometimes people are clearly speaking from a body of knowledge that they have, but they're like changing it for an improv setting.
Yeah.
Or like even the terminology that you would use in like those kinds of institutions applied to something that's like totally bananas.
Yes, exactly. And that's like the whole fun of it. And what I love about Stem Fatales is my whole purpose with wanting to do something that was science-based was when Justine and Betsaida had told me years ago of play to the top of your intelligence. Whereas I had been kind of hiding behind, I didn't want anyone to know I was a doctor and this was just my other thing. And then realizing that there is a way that I can make science and learning and humor accessible to people, right? And have fun with it. And when we throw out something that's so nerdy, it's cringeworthy and people laugh and they get it, you're like, oh, those are my people. They get it. They get why this is so ridiculous.
There's some shows where when I was working box office and the audience would come and you'd be like, oh, it's the audience for this show. And I feel like Stem Fatales is it's just so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, people that don't always necessarily come to the Comedy Spot, but they're coming out for a show that speaks to them.
Yes. And that's been the amazing thing in that we're trying to figure out with like marketing and promoting. And what makes my heart feel so full when we run into people after the show and I'm asking them like, how did you hear about us? And they're like, oh, we heard about it from so-and-so. Or it just popped up on my algorithm. I'm like, all right, thank you, Meta. You're doing something right for us. But that they are like, we had no idea this existed. And, they're doing it as like a girls' night or, whatever. It's usually people who came from either like Kaiser or UC Davis. And they're like, we had no idea. And this was so much fun. And there's a lot of new energy and the new people who are coming to the spot. And I don't know how often they'll come back, but just for them to know that something like this exists and they might remember they came to this place and they saw that one show.
Yeah.
And they might be curious about other ones is great. That just makes me so happy because I think I lived a block and a half from the Comedy Spot for so many years and didn't know what I was missing out on. I knew there were shows, but I didn't know I could take classes. I didn't know I could become, a part of the community the way that I did. until the moment that I did. And then I discovered all these shows, and it was just like going through the TV guide on like, our show nights and just being like, oh, this night I'm not working. I can come to this show.
Yeah.
And next week I want to go to that one. So that's just my hope for people is you get a teaser, find out what's interesting to you, and then hopefully that brings people back.
Yeah, I mean, having a variety of shows is great for that. It like helps people see themselves represented on stage and also helps them like have access to our community. It's very funny that you were talking about like the juxtaposition of like science and humor because my dad worked in biotech as his career and they would have like parties on Friday evenings that people would bring their families to. And so I grew up just running around like science labs and hallways while people were like making jokes and like eating food. And so in my mind, they're very enmeshed because like that's a lot of how I spent my childhood.
Well, people in science, when they need to let their hair down and relax, they go hard in the dorkiest possible way. And you know what? I'm here for it. Like whatever makes, the week more palatable to you, whatever it is, it's just kind of that release of tension and you feel it from people that they're finally able to shake off the stress of the day-to-day. And in healthcare particularly, there's a lot of that stress. So when you're able to give people a venue where they can literally shake that stress off and just laugh and enjoy themselves, I feel like that's such a gift.
Yeah, it's people who take like the careers and the work that they do very seriously because it's helping people and saving lives. And then you're like, and then you also need to just like
let it go.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So the accordion format, you mean like there is like a thing that's compact and then it expands to scenes and then it comes back to
come back to it with the panels and then break out into scenes again. And the idea is the first set is kind of a teaser, just let the audience know kind of what they're going to see, what's going to happen. And then each panel and then each set of scenes hopefully gets crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as I was rewatching our last show, I saw it was kind of a newbie audience. So I think they were pretty new to improv, didn't really know what to expect. So we were kind of easing them into it. And the laughter and just there was an energy shift in halfway through the show where I think they finally got it and it started to get more ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they kind of understood what was happening. And by the third beat, they were right there with us. I felt that shift in the show, and I was like, they got it. They understood what's happening. And you ideally want that from the beginning, but even if we walk them along, I realized, I was like, oh, these are people who had a good time and they got it.
Yeah.
They'll be back. Maybe not our show, but they'll come to another show.
I think that's such an interesting concept that if you iterate within a show where you have beats where you're doing like one thing and then you do the same thing but more energy, you can kind of like ramp the audience up over time.
Exactly. Especially people who are new to comedy and improv. I think one of the things that my friend said was when she came to one of my shows, she was like, I'm nervous for you guys on stage. And so she felt a lot of that anxiety. And I wonder if that's what a lot of audiences who aren't familiar with improv also feel, of they're just nervous for us, even though they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And so I think helping their discomfort is, and letting them know like, hey, it's okay. You know what? It's okay. It's like reassuring them. It's going to be fine. We're all going to have a good time. And then they realize like, oh, okay, this was actually fun. I didn't need to be so anxious about it.
Yeah. Like a really important part of showing that you're having fun on stage is just being like, we're all good here. I'm okay.
Yeah. We're not, everything's going to be fine. And poof, then this is over and it's all okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about like the look of sets a lot, or like the overarching part of sets. And so it's very interesting to talk about like tension in a narrative show, or like in Stem Fatales, like having like a rise and then a drop. It's just like this, it's, Kathleen equates it to like breathing.
Yeah.
Where you just want like tension and release, and tension as it builds and then it's the end of the show is good. But like the audience needs a break sometimes in the middle of a show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also for us, it just helps us refresh some material. It was hard for me. I think one of the bigger challenges is that, especially if I'm really enjoying a show and suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened to my patterns? And I have to I literally am going like this because I have them in my back pocket, but figuratively. But it also gives us a sense to kind of freshen things up. And if we forgot things but we've embedded within it a refresher, at the very end where we say, we've talked about this, we've talked about this,
Oh,
we've talked about
yeah,
that,
totally.
we've done a little summary, and it's like, oh, great, thank you for that. Chandra's really good at doing that. So then we all go into the third beat, remembering what all the topics were, and then refreshing our memory. So it was also kind of a built-in, side toolkit for us. Worked out.
That's so funny. I do that as the DM in Bardic, where because I'm not playing multiple characters like everybody else is, I have more brain space to remember things. And so partway through the show, I sometimes chime in. I'm like, hey, remember that quirk that you had or that thing that was true about you?
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to remember every single thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, your adrenaline is just pumping and you're just having fun. Hopefully you're just lost in the show and you're having fun.
Yeah.
And then you forget about everything else. Like sometimes I'll black out and I'll forget there's an audience. Seriously, and people will be like, oh, I can't believe you said that. I was like, honestly, I don't even remember the last 45 minutes. I just remember laughing and having fun, and suddenly something comes out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh my God, I said that? Oops. And and so those are the great moments for me, is when I have those blackout moments. That means that I was really enjoying myself in the show.
You were just letting go.
Yeah.
And having fun.
Exactly, just
That's
in the
great.
moment. Yeah, the essence of improv, so.
Yeah. Okay, you're the board of the president of the head of
chairperson of the board of directors.
The chairperson of the board of directors.
Yes.
Let me
say
say
it 5
that
times fast.
Okay, you say it with me. The chairperson of the board of directors. Okay, great. What do you do?
So basically, I help preside over the meetings, first of all, and keep us we have an agenda, make sure I keep us on task. And I'm kind of a liaison to Brian and Tina, right? Okay. So we talk about the operations of the Comedy Spot. And really what the purpose of a board for a nonprofit is that you want to make sure that the nonprofit is following basically the bylaws of what it means to be a nonprofit. And part of what that means is, I guess, I don't know how to say this in a nicer way, but it's basically keeping the CEO or the director in check, right? And keeping them accountable to the mission of the nonprofit, as well as making sure that the community is aware about the work that we're doing. So I'm not infrequently out and about at a restaurant or chatting with someone, and somehow, again, I'm like a friendly puppy, right? So I could have a great conversation with a rock, right? So I can talk to anyone mostly about anything. And so somehow improv will usually come up, or what I do comes up. And that is the perfect opportunity where I say, well, that's interesting that you and your husband are thinking about what to do on your anniversary. Have you heard about the Sacramento Comedy Spot? It's a great place to go out on a date and have a good time. So it's really just elevating, what it is that we do, the service that we provide to the community, and doing it in a way that's just like very fluid and very natural. And because I just had a natural gravitation towards the Comedy Spot, I don't even realize I'm doing it. As soon as anybody at work starts to ask me about improv, I'll hear my coworkers and be like, all right, okay, we've lost Sarah. All right, come back to her in 10 minutes. But really that's kind of what the purpose of the board is to make sure that we are operating within the bylaws and the rules of what it means to be a nonprofit, and what do we do to help elevate the status of the organization within the community to make sure it's fulfilling its mission.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You do great work. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I love being here.
That's wonderful. So how do you feel like improv has informed your work as a doctor and vice versa?
Oh, I love talking about this. Okay, so there is a place within improv in the professional sphere, and it's called applied improv. Again, we joke that it's called improv is life, but it's actually a thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it can apply in the business world, and specifically within medicine, there is kind of a subset of improv called med improv. So I realized this as I was taking classes and thinking, this is so applicable to everything that I do. I walk into, in my case, in the ICU, I walk into a room and it is a pretty terrible circumstance for that patient and that family, right? And I have to create a relationship with someone who does not know me, with their child that is in a precarious situation, and I have to establish trust with them immediately, right? Because that first impression is going to really, paint the scene for the rest of that, their child's hospitalization. And that's really hard. And they teach you in medical school how to build those relationships. But what improv taught me is that when there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot going on and my head is swimming, whether I'm in the middle of a code, whether I don't know what's going on with, this particular kid, whether there's just a lot of energy and emotion in the room.
Yeah.
And I can just stay present and just remember I am here to listen. I listen with my eyes, I listen with my ears, I listen with everything around me. I take stock of everything that's going on. And if I just stay present and if I listen really well, they will give me the information that I need. And I can trust my own instincts of, I know medicine, I know what I'm doing, I have experience, like we will get through this together. And specifically in talking to patients' families or even with colleagues of building that conversation, right? The yes anding part of it, and realizing that I might come into a room or a conversation with a script. However, that script goes out the window, right? It's suddenly we're talking about something else entirely, right? And if I stick to my script, to my pattern, right, I'm missing valuable information from this other person, and that serves nobody. And realizing that flexibility and that building of a relationship and that conversation with that person makes for a better outcome, better in like relationship with that person, and a much more collaborative, that's the word I'm looking for, a much more collaborative experience. So that's how it's applied at work. And so I take with Meta Improv, when I've done that with folks from UC Davis or medical students, is I take the warm-ups and the exercises that we have, I have them play it, and then I say, okay, let's do this in a real life situation. Like, let's go through a difficult conversation that you've had, and let's use the things that we've learned to make it easier on you. The way that improv has then influenced, so that's how improv has influenced me at work, and then the way work has influenced me in improv, I would say that probably the biggest example was when I became the resident Dr. Fauci. That was the moment where I was like, this is what I'm here for. And, you know, when Brian invited me to join the board, it was January of 2020. And at first I was just super excited to be a part of this. I never would have anticipated 2 months later that we were having to make the decisions that we had to make as an organization. And I just remember having this moment of pause and thinking, I'm so grateful to be in this position, in this organization, to be able to help lead a community that is just, we were swimming in misinformation. And that I was like, okay, I have a role here. I can help educate and inform and give people information that they can trust to keep each other safe. And that was humbling, and it was just a tremendous responsibility. And I was just, it was suddenly, I was like, it's all happening for a reason. Like, why I joined the Comedy Spot when I did and joined the board, like, I can still help people in a different way. And I just was grateful for the opportunity, honestly. So anyways, I didn't mean to get so deep, but that
was great. Thank you.
The two worlds, they weave in and out of each other more than I think I even realized.
Yeah, I had never heard of med improv before that, but that makes total sense about like having like adaptive care where you're working with families and like, I mean, because I think in those situations, people just want, like you said, want to feel heard and want to feel like there is somebody who is smart, who is like willing to see them and see their family and see their needs, and being like, every family is going to be different, every situation, every kid is going to be different. And so feeling like you have the groundedness within yourself to be flexible and see them is great. And I also liked what you said about like, when you're in scenes, or when you're in a full show, you're carrying all of these threads that you're like, am I weaving this in now? Am I not? And so like, yeah, it's a type of like information filtering almost. And so I could totally see how that would be applicable in situations when it's like frantic and you're just getting all this stuff thrown at you, and your brain has to be like, okay, well, we have to sort this pretty rapidly. And figure out what we need to use in this moment.
And learning to trust yourself and know that you have a team, you know, and that your team has your back, and that we will get through this one way or the other. And, you know, being comfortable with that uncertainty. I think that's the thrill that I get on stage, is because the rest of my life is so planned. And my job in the ICU is to anticipate everything that could go wrong and have a plan for it. And when I step out on stage, I have no plan, right? My best plan is to just be present and to listen and to take inventory of everything my scene partner is giving me and just be there for them and for each other. And that to me is thrilling. That helps me exercise a skill that I don't get to use on a day-to-day basis. And it strengthens it in both areas of my life. So that's, I think, the reason why improv is such a thrill for me.
Yeah, that you just get to go and trust, and it's like pressure, but it's like such a different type of pressure.
Yeah, it's a very low stakes pressure. Like the worst thing is that the scene doesn't work and then somebody edits and you're like, oh thank God that's over, right? Like that's the worst thing, you know.
You can't black out as a doctor.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen. There's no editing, you know.
TV, let's take that again.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't really wipe in that way, but it does prepare you and it helps you. I think just deal with all the stuff that gets thrown at you in life. You know, it's not always going to go the way that you thought, but you know, if you know, you'll land on your feet some way or the other. So.
Yeah. No, I feel like the ability to be present and be in the moment is something that a lot of people talk about that improv helps them with and teaches them.
For sure.
Because, like, I've definitely had shows when I, like, kind of space out or, like, I'm backstage and I'm just like, do, and then I'm like, somebody said something and I don't know what they fucking said and that's going to bite me in the ass real soon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, as I'm going through and thinking about patterns and I'm like, oh, I wasn't even listening to the last 3 sentences that came out of this person's mouth. Like, this is going to be interesting.
Haha.
Yeah, but that happens, you know, when you course correct.
Yeah, like, that's why you have a team. People will, you know, this is why they're like, restate your pattern. Restate it. Because if you miss it the first time, somebody's going to say it again.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to see all the shows that she is in, you can go to saccomedyspot.com/calendar. You can find her in there. Oh, and you're also on the board of directors page.
Yes, that is true, as well as I'm an instructor, so I will... I lead some of the diversity improv spaces.
Oh my gosh, we didn't even get to talk about that.
Ah! There's too many things. Yeah, and then as well as sometimes taste test, and then, yeah.
Okay, so all of those things, the diversity improv spaces and taste tests can also be found on the calendar.
Correct, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you tune in again. Bye.
Bye.